15 goals and about 225 objectives. In the Healthy People 2020 guidelines, there are 44 goals and 1,200 objectives to look at every single corner of our health and every single corner of our life. And there's a sector in there for vaccines that they want to have 90% of the population vaccinated with flu shots, DPT shots, MMR, and all of these were set up initially to be guidelines, but they have become goals. And the goals now, one of the steps in the goals is to take away your right to refuse. So what Healthy People 2020 is supposed to do is it's supposed to get everybody vaccinated and get everybody on board and get all the funding for adults and adolescents. And how this all kind of came about at the same time as we developed the Healthy People 2020 guidelines, it started in 2010. In 2010, this was declared the decade of vaccines. And in 2010, the Gates Foundation put up $10 million to start this to be the decade of vaccines. And within this decade of vaccines from 2010 to 2020, in these Healthy People guidelines, we need to have electronic medical records and tracking. We need to take away people's right to refuse. We need to ramp up all of these guidelines and turn them into goals. And they are well on their way. I mean, that's really, we're at 2017. We only have 3 years left for people to become really aware of this and get involved in not allowing this to happen in the future.
So this is something that literally affects everyone that's watching this program.
Everyone, not here and around the world, because in 2000, the Gates Foundation funded an organization called Gavi, which is the Global Alliance for Vaccination and Immunization. They started that organization with a donation of $750 million. Since that time, they have invested $6.8 billion into vaccinating the world.
Dr. Tenpenny mentioned forced vaccines for adults several times. I've read the literature, and it certainly does appear that one of the purposes of the Healthy People 2020 initiative is to vaccinate all adults as well as children and to eliminate their choice, to eliminate their right to refuse. These are fundamental rights.
To me, there is no more fundamental right in the U.S. than what we put in our body. We have fundamental rights to property and free speech. But if we don't have a fundamental right to what goes in our body, when nobody else is responsible for the consequences, nobody's taking liability, and we are going to be stuck financially and mentally and emotionally, physically with those repercussions, what more fundamental right do we have than what goes in our body? And I think right now our founding fathers are rolling over in their graves, because if we have that medical right taken away from us, what good are any other rights? To me, this is the most important conversation right now. We have to keep our rights and our choice as to what goes into our body.
After I came out of med school, I vaccinated thousands of children, and it's one of my biggest regrets in life that I did that, because I didn't know any better, and I trusted them, blindly trusted them, that they were telling the truth. And many physicians were like me. They believe that they're being told the truth. They don't have the time, effort, or energy or resources to carefully examine it themselves. But if they did, they would reach inevitably, if they were objective, rational, there's no other conclusion that you could reach. That there's some serious potential problems here that have to be seriously examined, and you have to weigh the evidence. And in some cases, if you objectively you've done your due diligence, you reach a conclusion you want to vaccinate, then it's fine. I think it should be a choice. It shouldn't be forced on anyone.
Mandatory vaccination, forced vaccination, no exceptions, no exemptions, vaccine policies and laws are completely contrary to the founding principles of the United States of America. I do not believe Americans, if they really understand what is happening here, will stand for it. I believe that Americans who understand the truth about how many people are being hurt by vaccines will stand up and fight for their freedom.
As an attorney, Allison, you did say that's assault and battery. When they take the child and force the vaccine.
Against parents' will, against the child's will, you are physically, it's a physical touching of another without their consent. That's assault. That's battery. The anticipation of that battery is actually assault.
Have you seen the government or the CPS try to step in to parents that would not vaccinate?
Oh, absolutely. There have been forced vaccinations. I mean, downright forced vaccinations, where they will come and remove the child and take custody of the child legally and bring that child so-called up to standard or code of where that child is supposed to be. And is mandated by the state under the guise of the child is in a public school. Well, guess what? You can't, a child has a fundamental right to a free public education. So you can't take one fundamental right, which is the right not to be vaccinated, and conjoin and take away another fundamental right, which is to a free public education. But that's what's happening. The state is saying if you're going to have your child in, and not only a public school, a private school. Well, what's going on with that?